Well, I'm pleased today to announce the arrests of numerous people here in New Bedford in a coordinated effort that will ultimately make our city a much safer place. And I'm pleased today that United States Attorney Carmen Ortiz is here to provide the details of today's event. Carmen is a good friend. She is a longtime colleague of mine when I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and she's done an exceptionally great job as United States Attorney, has brought the experience of a line prosecutor with the vision of a real leader to the office, and those skills are really paying off in what we've witnessed today, the real significant dent into gang activity in the city of New Bedford. And without any further ado, let me introduce United States Attorney Carmen Ortiz. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, John. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here to make this announcement, which I hope the activities of today and actually the further as the case develops will ensure the safety of the neighborhoods here in New Bedford. And I'm glad to join my former colleague from the U.S. Attorney's Office, Mayor Jon Mitchell, to make this announcement along with Assistant U.S. Attorney Glenn McKinley, who's our gang coordinator and primarily involved in this case, with Assistant U.S. Attorney Chris Pohl. But here at the podium with me is Bristol County District Attorney Samuel Sutter, Special Agent in Charge Rick DeLaurier of the FBI, as well as Chief David Provencher from the New Bedford Police Department, Detective Captain Frank Hughes from the Massachusetts State Police, and Chief Vito Scotti of the Bristol County Sheriff's Department. A lot of names, but you know what? That indicates to you that it took a lot of people, a lot of agencies to put this matter together. And I'm thrilled to announce that today local, state, and federal law enforcement have charged 46 individuals from New Bedford and the surrounding areas with federal and state drug offenses. There were approximately 38 people who were arrested today, and 2 are still at large. Now, these individuals have been charged with federal and state firearm as well as narcotics violations stemming from a long-term investigation that began in October of 2010 into the gang violence in this area. Today's arrests culminate from a long-term, multi-pronged investigation into gang violence in New Bedford, which began back in 2007. This is one of a number of long-term investigations that have been done by the Southeastern Massachusetts, the FBI, Southeastern Massachusetts Gang Task Force. Since 2007, just to give you a little bit of a backdrop to this, a number of law enforcement actions have taken place to disrupt 2 violent New Bedford street gangs, the United Front and Montes Park. And over the span of several years, together, we have chipped away at the violence between these 2 rival gangs and areas formerly controlled by them that, have been relatively quiet. We also, in 2010, it came to law enforcement attention that a national street gang, the Latin Kings, were attempting to reorganize in the north end of New Bedford. Now, we've also dealt with the Latin Kings in this particular area in 2006 or so, and had a long-term investigation, sort of annihilated them at that juncture. But in 2010, law enforcement got word that they were sort of resuscitating their activities in this particular area and that they began to take a hold and generate greater violence. As a result, local, state, and federal law enforcement have been working literally around the clock to infiltrate and disrupt gang activity in New Bedford, utilizing numerous investigative techniques. And thanks to their hard work, 46 alleged gang members and associates, drug dealers, and violent offenders were arrested today. 27 of them face state charges, which District Attorney Sutter will speak about in a short moment, and 18 Latin King gang members will face federal charges. Each of the federal defendants have been charged with distribution of narcotics or related drug conspiracy offenses in U.S. District Court in Boston, and will face up to anywhere from 20 to 40 years in prison if convicted. The goal of today's arrest was to disrupt the stem of violence and remove violent offenders from the streets of New Bedford. Together, we have made great strides towards this goal. I hope that it remains clear to anyone who is considering buying or selling drugs and involved in gang activity in the city of New Bedford that the federal government, including the United States Attorney's Office, the FBI, and other federal agencies, have shown and will provide a consistent presence here. Our strong partnership with the New Bedford Police Department, State Police, and the District Attorney's Office, which includes regular ongoing conversations, has netted many successful investigations and arrests. And I hope that the message is clear, that our collaboration and efforts with New Bedford does not simply end with these arrests today. We're in New Bedford and surrounding towns working tirelessly with our local and state partners, bringing all of our federal resources to help stem the violence in this particular area. And we do that with the primary goal of keeping the streets safe so that people can work, people can live, people can simply enjoy life without fear. I have to say that you are very fortunate to, I say this to the citizens of New Bedford, to have a very committed district attorney, police chief, mayor, and sheriff who continue to collaborate with the federal authorities to make sure that everyone who lives here is safe. And now I would turn it over to the district attorney.
Thank you very much, Madam United States Attorney. This is a very proud and rewarding day for those of us in law enforcement standing before you and for the city of New Bedford. And I would like to take this opportunity before I begin my remarks to personally thank United States Attorney Carmen Ortiz, Mayor of New Bedford Jon Mitchell, and all of the Police Chief David Preventure and all of the law enforcement personnel that you see arrayed in front of you. Some of you may recall my office, working in partnership with numerous federal and local law enforcement agencies, stood before you during the summer of 2007 to announce a very successful effort to dramatically curtail the problems New Bedford had been experiencing as a result of the criminal activities of the Latin Kings street gang. At the conclusion of that year-long investigation, some 38 individuals tied to this street gang were arrested and prosecuted, both by my office and prosecutors from the United States Attorney's Office in Boston. The results of that investigation were immediately felt by the many law-abiding citizens in the north end of this city, whose quality of life in their neighborhoods saw great improvement. The Latin Kings organization had largely been dismantled. That was 2007. While all of us here today continued to put pressure on other street gangs in New Bedford, like the one around Monty Park and the other around what was formerly known as the United Front, with similar large-scale investigations and arrests during 2008 and 2009, the people of the North End were enjoying a sharp reduction in drug dealing, violence, and intimidation, thanks to our joint efforts in 2007. Sadly, though, that began to change last year when federal agents and local law enforcement began noticing attempts by the Latin Kings to reorganize. Armed with this information and propelled by our shared mission to keep New Bedford as safe as possible, an extensive multi-agency investigation commenced. And today I'm proud to be standing with so many dedicated public servants in announcing the results of that cooperation and collaboration among various law enforcement agencies. I should also single out the state police, and furthest down on my right is the detective lieutenant in charge of my state police unit, Robert Andrade. My first assistant is also here, Thomas Quinn. More than 45 members or associates of the Latin Kings were taken off the streets today. That, in my opinion, will once again be felt by everyone living in this city. My office will be prosecuting approximately 25 of these individuals, including 9 of which have already been indicted in the Superior Court. My prosecutors have been instructed to seek high bail on these state defendants, and we will be seeking to prosecute the main targets of this investigation with severity. I strongly believe that our joint message here today that our joint presence here today will send a joint message to this gang and any others operating in the city. New Bedford is not a place that will allow you to reorganize and begin the cycle of drug dealing, violence, and intimidation all over again. We have shown time and time again all of these law enforcement partners that I proudly stand with here today, that we'll work together to target the leaders of these organizations, their suppliers and associates, and we will aggressively and proactively build cases, strong cases, against them. The citizens of New Bedford, Bristol County, and Massachusetts deserve that, and we are continuing to deliver results. Thank you very much. And now, my colleague, friend, and partner, Mayor of New Bedford, Jon Mitchell.
All right, thank you, Sam. Let me call forward FBI Special Agent in Charge Rick Delorier, whose office headed this investigation.
Thank you very much, Mayor Mitchell, and thank you, District Attorney Sutter and U.S. Attorney Ortiz. Good morning. My name is Rick Delorier. I'm the Special Agent in Charge of the FBI's Boston Division, and it's an honor to be here before you today. The FBI-led Southeastern Massachusetts Safe Streets Gang Task Force was formed by the FBI in 2006 for the singular purpose of disrupting and dismantling gang activity in southeastern Massachusetts. Today's operation is the task force's fourth large investigation targeting violent crime activity and violent gang activity in the New Bedford, Massachusetts area since the task force was formed 6 years ago. Working collaboratively, task force personnel from the FBI, the Massachusetts State Police, the New Bedford Police Department, and the Massachusetts Parole Board shared information, resources, and investigative know-how using an enterprise theory of investigation. This method uses short-term street-level enforcement activity along with sophisticated techniques such as consensual monitoring, financial analysis, Title III wire intercepts to root out and prosecute entire gangs, from the street-level gang members up through crew leaders and ultimately reaching the gang's command structure. For the past 6 years, this task force has repeatedly proven how effective federal racketeering, drug conspiracy, and firearms investigations can be when combined with state prosecutions, whether providing the incentive for witnesses to cooperate or imprisoning gang leaders for decades. In 2007, this task force arrested 37 New Bedford-based Latin Kings on both federal and state charges after they were identified as being responsible for a disproportionate share of the drug trafficking and gun violence in New Bedford's North End. In 2008 and in 2009, in separate operations, 24 members of two feuding gangs, the Montez Park and the United Front, were arrested on federal charges. After these arrests, as previous speakers have noted, the city of New Bedford went nearly a year without a homicide, and the crime in the city, particularly violent crime, dropped dramatically. As a result of today's arrests, neighborhoods in New Bedford, Massachusetts are safer now than they were mere hours ago. By now, it should be perfectly clear that the FBI and its task force partners are totally committed to the city of New Bedford and to the greater southeastern Massachusetts area. Gang members who try to fill the shoes of those arrested today should know that task force personnel will soon be in pursuit of them. Let me briefly detail how this investigation unfolded. Approximately 2 years ago, information indicated the New Bedford branch of the almighty Latin King and Queen nation were reorganizing and strengthening, and appeared to be responsible for a disproportionate number of violent crimes, including shootings. An investigative plan was formulated to target the leaders, members, and associates of the gang, all with the goal of identifying those who were harming the New Bedford community. Using undercover drug buys, electronic audio and video monitoring, and physical surveillance, the task force proceeded methodically. It made numerous controlled purchases of crack and heroin, and it seized kilos of cocaine. For 18 months, working days, nights, weekends, and holidays, the task force gathered evidence that resulted in today's arrest of 38 individuals on federal and state charges. This is an ongoing investigation, and additional charges may be forthcoming. This morning, more than 200 federal, state, and local law enforcement officers in a well-choreographed operation fanned out through the New Bedford area. Together, we safely arrested the majority of those we were seeking. Those who are fugitives are actively being sought and will undoubtedly be caught soon. As this operation unfolded over the past 18 months, I was extremely proud to be partnered with the agencies standing before you here today. The citizens of New Bedford can be proud of the work of the task force, as well as our many other state, county, and local law enforcement officers who participated in today's operation. My thanks also go out to the fine prosecutive work in this case from the United States Attorney's Office and the Bristol County District Attorney's Office. Achieved together, this operation was another outstanding federal, state, and local accomplishment in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The completion of this investigation by the Southeastern Massachusetts Gang Task Force displays our unified resolve to ensure that communities in this area are free from the scourge of gang violence. I want to thank each law enforcement partner agency here today for their vital contributions to the success of this investigation and for their dedicated efforts to make New Bedford and the greater Southeastern Massachusetts area a safer place for all of us. Thank you very much.
That primarily covers our announcement, except for Chief Provencher. Chief?
Thank you. Good morning. I'm really pleased to be here this morning, standing alongside such elite leadership who over time have continually demonstrated their commitment to ensuring public safety and safe streets in New Bedford. These partnerships began more than 6 years ago, and I'm really thrilled to be able to continue the work that was begun by former Chief Teachman in working alongside our federal, state, and other local partners to do as much as we can to reduce gun and gang violence in the city. I think this case demonstrates that commitment clearly. I want to take a moment just to thank Glenn McKinley for the work he's done for as long as I can remember in targeting these types of crimes. But specifically, I'd like to thank all the members of the Southeastern Gang Task Force, from the FBI agents to the state police, to the men and women who work in the task force, and the New Bedford police detectives who've worked alongside them, as well as the men and women in New Bedford who go out every day and night and do this work on the front lines. We get to stand here and shine in the spotlight, but it's the work they do every day and every night out in the front lines, out in the street, that matters. They're the ones that make the real difference, and they deserve all the credit. And I want to thank them for their continued commitment and the hard work they do. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Let me echo the Chief's praise of the members of the task force and everyone who made today a reality and a success. This is not easy stuff to pull off. To arrest this many people, to develop cases like the ones that are being made public today takes a tremendous amount of work and planning. First of all, say again that Carmen Ortiz deserves a tremendous amount of credit for prioritizing this type of operation. There are people out in the public who think that one-on-one drug crimes are no business of the federal government. What I say to those proponents who almost invariably don't live in cities, come to New Bedford. Come to neighborhoods that suffer from repeated terrorization by a small handful of folks who bring the entire place down. That's what we're dealing with today. Let me thank Glenn McKinley, my friend and former colleague at the U.S. Attorney's Office, for spearheading the neighborhood program at the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Project Safe Neighborhood Program, for so many years, and continuing to keep the pedal to the metal in these efforts. It's making a difference not only here in New Bedford, but across the state. We also thank Sam Sutter, as well as Chief Provencher, for making sure that federal law enforcement resources are used well here, and for coordinating well their resources and making this a multifaceted effort. It really does make a difference to have the likes of Chief Provencher and the state police and Sam Sutter at work, because not every place deals well with federal law enforcement. These individuals recognize that the federal resources are a force multiplier, to use a common term. It can make a very big difference, as Rick Delorier was pointing out, in a short period of time. And let me thank the FBI for continuing their efforts here I know the FBI has a policy of not naming names of agents, and I won't do that, but I will just say you've got a great leader in the Lakeville Resident Agency Office, and he's a big part of the success here today. Let me say a couple of things. As mayor, I spent a lot of time touting the attributes, the assets of our city. I always prefer to be doing that, and there's a part of me that prefers not to be touting or talking publicly about there having to be more than 40 arrests within our city limits, because this is a great place, and this isn't the fact that we have this many people committing offenses in New Bedford isn't a reflection on New Bedford generally. But the reality is that there are a handful of people who cause a disproportionate amount of disorder and chaos and unsafety in our neighborhoods that have to be dealt with very forcefully. And it's been my belief all along, and I've stated this publicly time and time again, what's required to deal with the worst of the worst on our city streets, that small segment of the population that commits a disproportionate amount of the crime, is to make sure that they are prosecuted federally. And so let me be really clear about the message here today. Boston is a long way off from New Bedford. We don't have a federal court here, and in some ways the federal courthouse may seem to be an abstraction to those who are out in the streets who are tempted to sell drugs and to sell firearms. But for those who might be tempted to do those things and are listening here today, this is what you need to know. You need to know that there are 16 individuals, soon to be 18 individuals, who are going to be prosecuted in federal court. They're about to have conversations with their defense attorneys in the next couple of days. And here's how those conversations are going to go. Their attorneys are going to tell them, you are not in state district court anymore. You are not part of the revolving door that that courthouse sometimes offers you. You're not going to get multiple second chances. You get indicted in federal court when the government has the goods on you, and they have the goods on you. And here's what you're looking at. You're going to be convicted in all likelihood. In 2010, the last year for which we have this data, 93% of the defendants in federal court were convicted. You are not going to be bailed. You're not walking out of the court today. It doesn't work that way in federal court. Federal sentences are a lot longer. They are served far away in the Midwest, not in North Dartmouth with friends and neighbors. There's no parole in the federal system. It is, for these individuals, a rude awakening. It's game over. And people who are tempted to sell drugs in New Bedford need to know that. New Bedford is not open to this kind of business. And as long as this group here is working together, and we will continue to work together as the U.S. Attorney just articulated, we're going to continue to press and press and press. And again, through the leadership of Carmen Ortiz and Sam Sutter, this is going to be a recurring event until we make our city streets safe. And so, again, I applaud the efforts here today. This is great leadership and great collaborative work by so many people, and it means a lot to our city because we're really turning the corner as a city. We're becoming safer, we're becoming a more hospitable place to live, and we're becoming a place where people are going to want to move to and live, and I look forward to that day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Just in closing, I just want to reiterate what many of my partners have said here today, that we're very, very grateful. We get here to tell you the good news of all of our efforts, but it's really the men and women that have been on the front lines, on the street, conducting, taking the actual steps to do this investigation, whose lives are at risk, that we really owe a great debt of gratitude to, and I want to thank their efforts. So thank them. Any questions?
Could you just restate on the federal charges what they could be looking at as far as time? Someone said it.
Yes, they're looking at anywhere from 20 to 40 years, depending upon how many charges they're convicted of and which specific charges they're convicted of.
Are there any drugs or guns seized today?
Not today. These were the undercover operation that's been going on for 18 months, or a number of seizures of guns and drugs that have occurred previous to today.
I looked, and I'm seeing a lot of school zone violations. Were these people convicted of selling near a school, within a school? What does that mean? I'm sorry.
Yes, I'll have to-
That's a state statute which calls for a mandatory 2-year sentence if it's prosecuted in the district court, and a 2.5-year sentence if it's prosecuted in the Superior Court, but it has to do with the proximity to the school. Right now, it's within 1,000 feet, but there's a bill afoot in the legislature to reduce it to 500 feet. That's all that means. That's not selling to school children or students.
Could someone elaborate on what is meant by the disproportionate amount of violent crime? Could you give us some specifics?
In what context, Kurt?
Well, it said that the members of the Latin Kings were responsible for a disproportionate amount of violent crimes. Were these shootings, were these stabbings?
Well, that was certainly seen in 2006 and 2007, and I included that in my remarks, and the data backs it up. I checked with, actually, Greg with Chief Prevention before I included that in my remarks. There was a marked decrease in violent crime and drug dealing in the north end of the city after the sweep in 2007, where 38 individuals were arrested and prosecuted. So these sweeps work. Latin Kings in 2007, Monty Park in 2008, United Front in 2009, although it could have been reversed, which one was 8 and which one was 9, and now once again here we are in 2012. I think that was the message from the mayor, that was the message from the United States Attorney, and what is really, that's why I said proud and rewarding, is because we all work together so well. Glenn McKinley and Bill McCauley are on the phone almost several times a week, is that fair to say? So that's a great situation. The mayor is a former illustrious federal prosecutor, so New Bedford is blessed right now because of the leadership at the highest level of law enforcement, including the United States Attorney and the Chief of Police and the Detective Lieutenant in charge of the State Police Unit. It's my view.
And I just want to follow up on this because it's something that we deal with as, the federal government and federal law enforcement, that these kind of sweeps have taken place today, long-term, which are based on long-term investigation, typically by a gang task force, is helping not only just here in New Bedford, but we've taken these kinds of actions in Lynn, Massachusetts, in Brockton, in Boston, and other parts of the state. And so, we collaborate with the same federal, local, state agencies, basically to address a problem that's very concentrated, that causes a tremendous amount of violence and harm to a specific community. And by doing these investigations that result in these sweeps, a lot of peace can come to those communities, and I've heard it from community members myself.
The only thing I would say in direct response to your question,
Can you step
Kurt.
back up to the mic, please?
Sure. The only thing I would say in direct response to your question, Kurt, is that the task force is not in the business of targeting Boy Scouts.
Quick question. In 2007, 2008, what was the conviction rate on the people that were gathered in those sweeps? Was a vast majority convicted once they got to court, or how did that work out?
I do believe that a vast majority of individuals were convicted, but I don't have the specific numbers.
We can get that to you, but frankly, I'm not aware of anyone who was acquitted out of that sweep. I mean, I could be mistaken, but we'll get that to you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Pictures of some of these individuals, will they be provided? Any of the people arrested, any pictures yet? Is that
No, that we do not provide any pictures. We're not allowed to under the local rules in
any of
Massachusetts.
the local
We have the
arrests?
local ones, I think Greg has those for you.
Thank you.
I think the rules are different for the local than state prosecutions.
Just a clarification on the numbers here. There were 38 arrested today.
That's correct.
You've got 46 individuals charged.
That's
Two
correct.
remain at large. Are the others
Have been
already
in custody.
They're, okay.
That's correct. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Every year, mothers lose their babies to gun crimes. You'll always be your mother's baby. So before you commit a gun crime, think about who you'll leave behind. Gun crimes hit home.